Hello to all of you from around the world and welcome to another episode of the Behind the Frame series. And in this series, myself along with the rest of the Wild Eye Guides are going to be sharing our tips and tricks in Lightroom and editing some of our favorite images, sharing our processes with you, and hopefully you'll be able to take something from that. So today I'm going to be doing one of my favorite images from the incredible India tour that I hosted recently of a Langur monkey. So with that being said, I hope you learn one or two things and let's get into it. So like I mentioned to you guys, I'm going to be editing one of my favorite images from India, and that is this image, a beautiful, beautiful photo of this Langur monkey, which turned out absolutely amazingly. It was one of those images that we were really hoping to get once we got there. And you know, while you are out in India, of course, tigers, you're amazing, that's the main focus, and we love photographing those. But you end up spending a lot of time with the likes of monkeys, and this is the type of shot that we had in mind. You know, this beautiful idea of this monkey looking up into the sky, getting that catch light, absolutely shooting the lights out of it when the opportunity came across. And what's amazing about this is we had an image in mind, or let's say rather an edit in mind, when we took this photograph. So what I mean by that is, straight off the bat, we took this image, my guest and I were sitting out in the field, and we knew that immediately this was going to be a black and white image. So with that being said, today I'm going to share that with you guys, and hopefully we can get stuck into it and you'll be able to learn one or two things. So let's jump into it. The first thing I want to share with you guys is just one or two things regarding the specifics. So I shot the image at 1/320th of a second at an aperture of 7.1 and ISO 400. I was also shooting it on the latest Canon R6 along with the RF 100 to 500 millimeter lens, which is a brilliant combination. It was the first time I was using that combination and I absolutely loved it. And it worked perfectly. You know, it was one of those, was able to lock in on the eyes, put the focus there with the auto eye focus, and very, very happy. So nothing too much I would change with my settings. I'm pretty happy with that. I know for a fact that I was underexposing as well, probably by about 2/3 or so. And that's generally just because those forests are nice and dark. So, you know, you want to always try and preserve that. And in this case, for this image, it worked nicely as well because of this beautiful catch light. I must say, like I said, it's one of those that we were extremely excited about when we did get the photograph. So anyway, so today I'm going to run you through, like I mentioned, my thought process, my editing process, my workflow, all of that. And right off the bat, my first thing with regards to my workflow. So whenever I get to an image, I've got three things in mind. I'm cropping, I'm then making global adjustments to the entire image, as well as making local adjustments with the likes of masks and getting a little bit more specific about certain edits, whatever it may be. So I'm going to run you through that today, and we're going to take it from there. Whenever I do also get to an image, I'm always asking myself a few questions, and that's regarding visual mass. Now, visual mass, as we all know, that determines how much something in your image draws your viewer's eyes, okay? So certain things such as brightness, contrast, sharpness, texture, all of those types of things, that's the type of stuff that will draw your viewer's eyes to a specific area in your image. And of course, more than anything, you want your viewers to be drawn to your subject. Now, with all of that in mind, the way I like to say it is if your subject is winning in those categories, then your image is winning. So just keep that in mind whenever, throughout the entire process of editing this image, and let's see if we can make some magic here. All right, so with the first thing in mind, like I mentioned, we spoke about cropping. So I'm going to come in here, I'm just going to remove that for us. So I'm going to come in here straight off the bat, I'm going to set this to a 4:6. That's just generally a nice sort of general cropping ratio that I like to use, unless I'm trying to crop for a specific reason or whatever it may be, but generally I am using the 2:3 or 4:6. But anyway, so now what we're going to do, first thing I want to do here is I definitely want to focus on giving this monkey some negative space to look into. It doesn't help if I bring this all the way here, leave it like that. There's very little room for this monkey to look up to, if that makes sense. So with that in mind, I'm rather going to bring that up a little bit. And the next thing I'm going to do as well is I just want to straighten this based on his eyes a little bit. So in other words, I'm going to bring it slightly to around about there, something like that. I'm going to bring that in a tad, and we're going to put that up nice and high. And probably going to go, let me just make sure he's nicely in the middle. Probably going to go for something like that. There we go. So that's our crop. Now, that's the first step in our process. And the second step, like I mentioned, we're going to start making some global adjustments to this image. Bearing in mind, keeping in mind our ideas of brightness, sharpness, contrast, and texture, those types of things, okay? Like I mentioned to you, we did have an idea of how we were going to edit this image though right from the get-go. And I always knew in my mind that this was going to be a black and white image. So with that being said, I'm going to hit the letter V on my laptop for Victor, and that's going to flick it over to black and white for us. Oh man, look at this. So, like I say, let's get stuck into this. So I'm going to start off with some global adjustments here. And I generally come into my basic panel first. I'm probably going to work on my exposure just a tad. I'm going to bring that up a little bit to around about just more than a third or so. Just bring up the brightness a little bit here. You know, emphasize these beautiful whites, the beautiful catch lights, all of that stuff. Worth mentioning here, when I am looking at this image already from the get-go, and let's say when we talk about the likes of, brightness, contrast, and we ask ourselves, is our subject winning in all of those categories right now? I don't think so. I think in terms of sharpness, definitely. You know, we've got a beautiful, beautiful blurred background, beautiful bokeh in the background there, happy days. So sharpness, 100% we're winning. We do, however, have these sort of bright areas here. One in this corner, one in this corner, and then we've got this contrast here as well, heavy contrast. We've got the same with our monkey, but we've got distracting elements. So with that in mind, we're going to keep all of those in the back of our mind throughout our editing process here, and just make sure that our monkey is winning as much as possible. Okay, so like I say, we got that exposure up nicely. Now the next thing I like to do, I like to come down to these blacks, whites, shadows, highlights, and I like to work from the bottom here. And this is just going to allow us to start getting some beautiful punchy contrast in here. Keep an eye on the histogram as well. It starts to stretch that out nicely. We're going to bring our shadows down, and we're going to bring those highlights up. Now already, just a subtle adjustment, have a look what that's done. We're already getting that beautiful punchiness in our image over here. Happy days. Now the next thing I'm going to go down to, I'll be honest with you guys, I'm an absolute sucker for the clarity slider. So you're generally going to see me using that a lot. What that does for us is that it adds contrast within our edges. So you really get that nice definition in your edges. It's beautiful. I love it. I use it in my global adjustments, in my local masks, all of those. So let's get using of that. So I'm going to bump up that clarity. If I do this extreme, have a look there. You see how it defines those edges for us very, very nicely. So it's always good. It's a very nice form. I almost find it as a form of sharpening a lot of the time. So I am going to bump that up for us just to get some beautiful definition in there. You can see how that really punches into our monkey's chin over here. And again, if we just go switch this, all we've worked in is the basic panel, and have a look how we've just brought this image to life already. So I am happy with that. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come down to my tone curve. Now, the reason I prefer to use the tone curve when I'm adding contrast is that just allows us to be a bit more controlled with the contrast that we add in. If we do come in here in this basic panel and go over with this sort of broad contrast slider, you can see how it adds contrast to all of those areas. And instead, I would prefer to come down to my tone curve where I can just be a little bit more controlled about that, a little bit more specific about where I'm adding contrast. And that allows us to, just add that artistic touch to our image. So I'm probably going to come down here. I'm going to go down into my darks. I'm going to really try and darken those a bit. And I'm going to pump up these whites a little bit. Not overboard. You can see we can very easily push it too much, but just to about there. And like I say, that really just adds in that nice punchy contrast that we want. There's a bit of shadows over his face here. So what I might do is I might actually go the opposite way. No, definitely not. I'm actually not going to do that. So I'm going to leave it just like that. Going to tap on this eye on and off for you. Have a look at the difference here that we've got. You can see how we've just really got some punchiness all around in this image. If I hold in my backslash key, obviously it's going to take it from that color, but this is what we are going for. So I certainly am starting to like the look of that. The next thing is this black and white panel, guys. Whenever I'm doing a black and white image, I am always playing around in this panel. And the reason being is, I'll show you guys the idea of it now, but this allows us to either darken or brighten a specific tonal color within an image. And once again, it just gives us that control. That's what we always want when it comes to our images. If you can have as much control as possible when you are editing, to the point that you're not overdoing it, you're not underdoing it, but you manipulating it the way you want to. That's when you're in the golden phase. Happy days, that's where you want to be. So with that being said, let me show you here what I mean. So if I just hold in my backslash key to show you guys, let's see, we got some greens in here. It looks like we have some blues around this monkey. This is more like a yellowy, orangey, reddish type of tone. So if I let go of that, for example, let me take those greens. So if I go on this green slider, only the greens within the image are going to be affected. So if I want to brighten those up, if I want to darken those, whatever it may be, I think darkening might be quite nice, because that just creates that separation between this monkey and this white. Separation by contrast, through contrast rather. So you can see over here how we have that dark patch there against this monkey's contrast. Another thing is definitely these bright patches. We can see how that's competing against brightness and contrast with our monkey. So with that in mind, another cool trick within here, if you're ever unsure about the color that you may be dealing with, for example here, this looks like a mixture of colors, you can simply go here, you grab onto this tool, I click on it once, and you can then go sit your cursor wherever you would like, and literally with my mouse, I'm just bringing that down. And have a look, keep your eye here, how it will start to bring down a few of these sliders. And that just works then in those specific tones for us. So you see here how we really start to darken that all around our monkey. I don't want to overdo it, so I'm going to bring it back just a touch, but to around about there. See, I come over to the same side, or the opposite side, same thing. Have a look here how we've almost created this natural vignette now for our monkey. I see it is affecting the monkey as well, but that's fine. I think there were some blues there. Let's see what happens if we bring these blues up. Yeah, you see there how it's affecting our monkey quite nicely. So I'm going to actually bring those up just a tad there to around about there. Let's switch this on and off. Look at that. Absolutely beautiful. So I'm happy with that. I don't think there's too much more. I do still want to work on these a little bit, but we'll work on that at a later stage. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here into my detail panel. Now, a great tool and a great tip here. If I hold in my option key, okay, I'm working on a MacBook. So if I hold in my option key as well as my right click, and I'm right clicking on this masking slider, everything that is white is going to have the sharpening applied to it. Okay, so in this case, if I hold the option key and I hold in my mouse, everything that's white, so the entire image basically, that's where the sharpening is being applied. Instead, what I want to do is I want to drag this across and pull this here, and all of a sudden see now how we are defining to Lightroom where the edges are that we actually want this to be applied. And I'm going to pull that across nicely. Another small thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab this little box over here, and I'm going to just put it on this eye. Just want to keep an eye on that eye. That is my focus point completely on this image. So again, just holding in my option key, holding in that, we can now see how we are defining the edges to Lightroom. As opposed to the entire image being sharpened, I'm telling Lightroom, nope, I want to just sharpen it to around about there, I would say. Now I'm going to go and add my sharpening. I'm going to add a little bit of radius, and I'm going to add some detail. Just like that. So always a great tip there, guys. Make sure you bring that masking tool across. You don't want to apply the sharpening to the entire image. You want to apply it to your subject, as we mentioned. So looking at this again, referring back to our 3 or 4 categories that we want to win in, okay? Sharpness, without a doubt, our monkey is the sharpest within this image. We've got the beautiful blurred background. In terms of contrast, we still are fighting a bit of contrast here, but I do believe we are starting to push it in here, which is where we want to be. In terms of brightness, this is definitely the brightest part of the image here, and that is great. That's what we want. All around this monkey, check how bright that is. Happy days, it's beautiful. That's what we want. So moving throughout my process and my workflow now, I'm going to now start moving away from my global adjustments, and I want to start making a few specific local masks and add those just to make those final touch-ups that I need to make sure that my subject is winning as much as possible. So with that in mind, let's jump up here into this little circle symbol up here, and that's going to bring us to our masks. So if I go in here now and I select my subject, let's see how well it does. It's generally quite good, guys. It really is. The AI on this thing is unbelievable. Anyway, so I see it has missed just a little bit of the hairs up here. So I'm going to go add into there. I just want to add, probably with a brush. I generally like to keep my flow and density as, around about 40. The reason being for that is if my flow and density is up to 100, I just have to brush once with that adjustment, and 100% of that adjustment is going to be added to that edit. Instead, if I bring my flow and density down to 40, that's going to allow me to make a slightly more subtle adjustment, and it just kind of blends in a little bit more. And let me show you what I mean here. For example, if this is all the way up to 100, have a look here. We're going to brush there, boom, 100% of the edit is applied there. Instead, now if I go bring this down to, let's say, 40, I'm going to do the same with my density, bring that down to 40. I go and brush underneath here. You see there, a lot more of a subtle adjustment. I would have to brush over this a few times for it to become 100%. All right, so I hope that makes sense. I'm just going to delete those two quickly, and I'm going to go add. I'm going to add with a brush, and like I say, that's down nice and low around about 40. So I'm just going to go really kind of rough, guys, just to add in these hairs that we have missed over here, somewhere around about there. Ching, 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 ching. Add all of that in there. While I'm busy with this, I got a quick joke for you guys. What do you call an American bee? A US bee. There we go, let's get back into it. Focus mic. There we go, last little hair there. And that's about it. So generally, like I say, nice and rough up there, but want to work on this monkey specifically. Probably what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to bump up my exposure once again, very, very subtly, just to make sure we've got beautiful brightness in there. Literally, look at that, just a touch, 0.09. I'm going to bring in my blacks here, create some contrast. Again, very subtle. Look how easily it picks it up there. So I'd rather bring that back just a touch, literally to -4. Let's get those whites up. And I'm probably going to bring these shadows up just so that we don't have too much darkness over there. If I go flick this on and off, look at the subtle adjustment we've made here. Once again, working all in favor of those categories: brightness, contrast, sharpness. We're starting to get all of that. Last little adjustment that I'm going to make to the monkey. I told you guys I love the clarity slider. I'm going to bump that up a little bit, and I'm going to bring some sharpness up. So around about there, as you can see, I've literally, those 4 categories, I've worked on those, and that's what we are getting. Beautiful punchiness, contrast there. Happy days. All right, now looking at this again, thinking about those eyes. We love those eyes. We love that catch light. Let's emphasize that a tad as well. So I'm just holding in my space bar and zooming in here as well, so I can get it nice and tight. And I'm going to make a new mask. I made one already, but another, whoopsie daisy, what did I just do there? Let's undo that. Sorry about that. Let's bring that back. All right, so I'm just going to go in here. I just want to create a new mask, and what I'm going to try it with is the objects. Now, the object selection for masking is something I've started to use a lot more recently. It's powerful, it's amazing. It's similar to a brush, but basically all you're doing is you brushing over the area or the object that you want to pick up, and Lightroom with the AI picks it up for you and sort of defines your object for you, as the word mentions. So in that case, I'm going to click object. I'm going to come in here to these eyes. I'm going to brush around here, and let's see what it does. Yeah, there we go, happy days. I'm going to do the other eye as well, object, brush around here. Let's see what Lightroom does. All good, there we go. So I'm happy with that. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to press O for overlay to take that away. Once again, I'm just going to bring up some exposure in there. I'm going to bring those blacks down, get nice punchy contrast in there, and bring those whites up. Really, really get that catch light looking beautiful. If we zoom out there, I mean, that's what we want. Oh, love it. Absolutely love it. Let's get some sharpness in there. Get that up nicely. Happy days. Oh, man, I love it. If I go switch this eye on and off, check that adjustment. Subtle adjustment in the eyes. Happy days. Now, one other thing that I do want to add in here, again, just on these sort of white hairs here, especially in between the blacks over here, we've got some more as well at the top here. I want to just go and get those whites shining through there a little bit more, just so we got an ever so slightly more contrast in there. So once again, just going to go with a brush. I've got a nice subtle brush. I'm going to bring up my whites to around about 30 or so, and that's all I'm going to do. Just with those whites, come and brush in between here. You're going to see that's going to add some really nice contrast once again, and we're going to go nicely on the edges. Once again, nicely up here, make sure you get some of that in there to something like that. This is going to be a very subtle adjustment. I doubt we're going to see a huge difference here, but let's see. Yeah, you can see it. Keep your eye on that white fur. Have a look there how we've just gotten some more white, punchy whiteness in there. Okay, and now if I look at my monkey and I think about that, I'm pretty happy to what we've gotten to with that monkey. There's not too much more. There's only one thing that's still bothering us. And once again, we're thinking constantly I'm thinking back to brightness, contrast, sharpness, texture, visual mass. All in all, visual mass. Is my subject holding the most visual mass? And when I look at this, I still find that these edges here are busy fighting me a little bit. And a really cool Lightroom shortcut, if you hit the letter L for lucky on your laptop, that will then just sort of darken everything around you. If you hit it once, it kind of blurs it out a bit. Hit it twice, it darkens, and all you can see now is your image. And this is always a great way to see your distracting elements on the edge of your frame. And just look at your image on its own. Try and figure out where else can you add a last sort of touch up here. And certainly for me, it's this bright patches here that I want to work with. So I'm going to hit the letter L once more for lucky, and that's just going to take me back to where I need to be. Now the way I'm going to deal with that is I'm going to come in here, I'm going to add a radial gradient, and I am going to invert that. But firstly, I'm going to make it nice and big for us over here, round about there, nice circle shape. And I'm going to grab this, I'm going to pull it smack bang over my monkey, and I'm going to go and invert this. Now remember, everything that's red, that's where the application is, or the edit is going to be applied. So I just want to make this feather slightly smaller, rather that way. Okay, try and get that off my monkey as much as possible. And now what I want to do is I'm just going to go and darken this background. For extreme sake, just to show you guys what I'm doing, you see how we're darkening this area nicely over here. That's what I want to do. So I just want to do it a little bit more subtly to around about, I would say something like that, maybe 2/3 or so. And let's have a look. Let's just tap that on and off. Have a look. Beautiful. Subtle adjustment. But you see here, we've softened that a bit. And when we look at this now as a whole, if I hold in my backslash key for before and after, happy days. We've really pushed and pulled this quite a bit to bring all of that emphasis to our monkey. And when I look at this now, I think to myself, happy days. My monkey is definitely the sharpest subject within the image. I think it's definitely the brightest if we look at these areas, including the eyes. We've got beautiful contrast here. And all in all, I am absolutely happy with this image. So that is it, guys. I hope that you guys have enjoyed following along throughout my thoughts, throughout my workflow, and hopefully you've taken one or two tips from that. And if you happen to see any more of my images, any of my colleagues' images, and you guys would like us to jump onto one of these behind the frames, this is a series that we're going to be doing a lot more often now, and hopefully to pass on our knowledge to you guys. And like I say, if you see anything you'd like to find out, how on earth did you guys get to that edit, please let us know and we'll happily get one of these videos out for you. So once again, I hope you've enjoyed that. I look forward to seeing you the next time. And until then, have an amazing day wherever you may be. And thank you for your time. Cheers, everyone.